Welcome! Join us as we improve your English through the power of storytelling. Each story is carefully crafted to help you learn new words and enjoy the journey of language learning. Today's story is called The Forgotten Smile. First, enjoy the complete story without interruption. Then, stay until the end, where we will review important vocabulary words from the story together. You will learn the pronunciation, meaning, and how to use each word in sentences. Now sit back, relax, and let's begin the story. The Forgotten Smile. There was a man named David Chen. Everyone in the city knew his name. CEO of the largest consulting firm. Owner of 3 buildings downtown. A man who turned everything he touched into gold. But if you asked anyone who knew him to describe David Chen in one word, they would say the same thing: cold. David Chen never smiled. Not at meetings, not at dinners, not even at celebrations when his company won another major contract. His face was a mask of stone. Professional. Controlled. Untouchable. People respected him, some feared him, but no one could say they knew him. Because David had built walls so high around himself that even he had forgotten what was inside. He lived alone in a penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Every morning he woke at 5, checked the markets, answered emails. By 6, he was in the gym. By 7, in the office. Meetings, negotiations, decisions, numbers, results. Every night he returned to that empty apartment, ate dinner alone, reviewed reports, and went to bed. This was his life: efficient, successful, profitable, empty. One Saturday morning, David was organizing his home office. He rarely kept personal items. Everything had to be useful, purposeful. But in the back of a drawer, behind old contracts and forgotten business cards, he found a small leather photo album. He almost threw it away, but something made him open it. The first page showed a photograph he did not remember. A young boy, maybe 7 years old, sitting on a beach. The boy was laughing. Really laughing. Head thrown back, mouth wide open, eyes sparkling with pure joy. He was building a sandcastle, and it was lopsided and falling apart. But the boy did not care. He was radiantly, completely happy. David stared at the photograph. It took him a full minute to realize that boy was him. He sat down slowly, still holding the album. He studied that child's face, that smile, that joy, and he felt something crack inside his chest. When was the last time he had smiled like that? Not the polite curve of lips at a business dinner. Not the practiced expression for a company photo. But really smiled. From somewhere deep and true. He could not remember. David turned the pages. More photos. Him at 10, grinning with a missing tooth, holding a trophy from a school science fair. Him at 15, arm around his mother, both of them laughing at something the camera had caught. Him at 20, graduating college, eyes bright with hope and possibility. In every photo, he was smiling. Real smiles. The kind that reach your eyes and change your whole face. David closed the album and looked at his reflection in the dark window. The man staring back was 42 years old. Expensive suit, graying hair, and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to feel anything. What happened to that smiling boy? When did he disappear? David tried to remember. He thought back through the years. College, he had been happy. Starting his first job, excited. his first promotion, proud. But somewhere along the way, something had shifted. The promotions got bigger, the stakes got higher, smiling became unprofessional, laughing became a waste of time. Emotions became weaknesses to hide. He remembered his mentor telling him, "If you want to lead, you cannot be their friend. You have to be above them, separate, unreachable." So he had climbed higher and higher, and with each step up, he had left pieces of himself behind. The laughter, the warmth, the connection, the smile. Until one day he reached the top and realized he was completely alone. That night, David could not sleep. He kept seeing that photograph. That little boy who could find joy in a falling apart sandcastle. What would that boy think of the man David had become? The next morning was Sunday. David never took Sundays off. There was always work to do. But that morning he did something he had not done in years. He went for a walk. No destination, no purpose, just walking. The city was different on Sunday mornings. Quieter, families in the park, street musicians playing, people sitting in cafes, talking and laughing. David walked past them all, watching, observing a world he had stopped participating in. He found himself in the old part of town, where the buildings were shorter and the streets narrower. There was a small flower shop on the corner, and standing outside was a young girl, maybe 8 years old, arranging flowers in buckets. She was humming to herself, completely absorbed in her task, putting the red ones here, the yellow ones there, stepping back to admire her work. She looked so content, so present. David stopped to watch her. She reminded him of something. That feeling of being completely absorbed in a moment. When was the last time he had felt that? The girl looked up and saw him staring. Instead of being scared, she smiled. A big, gap-toothed smile. "Hello, mister. Do you want to buy some flowers? My mama grows them." David opened his mouth to say no. He did not need flowers. He had no one to give them to. But something in her smile stopped him. "What would you recommend?" he asked. She took the question very seriously. She walked around the buckets, touching different flowers, considering. Finally, she picked up a simple bunch of white daisies. "These ones, because they are happy flowers. See how they open up to the sun, like they are smiling." David took the flowers. They cost almost nothing. He handed her the money, and she counted it carefully, tongue between her teeth in concentration. Then she smiled at him again. "Thank you, mister. I hope they make you smile too." She skipped back into the shop, humming again. David stood there holding the daisies, flowers that smile. When had he last noticed something like that? When had he last stopped to see the world instead of just moving through it? He carried the flowers home, put them in a vase on his kitchen counter. And for the first time in years, his apartment felt a little less empty. That week, David found himself thinking about the girl, about her smile, about how easy it had been for her, how natural. He started noticing other things. The security guard in his building who said good morning every single day, even though David had never responded. The barista who made his coffee and always asked how his day was going, even though he only ever grunted in reply. The cleaner who left a mint on his desk every evening with a little note that said, "Have a good night." People had been trying to connect with him. He had just never noticed or never cared. On Thursday, David did something unusual. When the security guard said good morning, David stopped. He looked at the man, really looked at him, and said, "Good morning. How are you?" The guard looked shocked. Then his whole face lit up. "I am good, sir. Thank you for asking. I hope you have a great day. It was such a small thing, but something about that man's surprised happiness stayed with David all day. The next morning, he thanked the barista by name. She looked at her name tag, surprised he had even noticed it. "You are welcome, Mr. Chen. Your usual?" "Yes, please." And he tried something. He smiled. Just a small one. It felt strange, like using a muscle he had forgotten existed. But the barista smiled back, a real smile, and David felt something warm in his chest. Something he had not felt in so long, he almost did not recognize it. Connection. Over the next few weeks, David started to change. Small changes. He began saying good morning to people, asking how they were doing, actually listening to the answer, thanking people not just with words, but with eye contact and attention. And slowly, people started responding. The office felt different, less tense, more human. His assistant, who had worked for him for 5 years and never had a personal conversation with him, mentioned her daughter was graduating college. David surprised himself by asking to see pictures. He was not good at this. He was awkward. Sometimes he did not know what to say, but he was trying. And people noticed. One evening, David's business partner, James, stopped by his office. They had worked together for 15 years, built this company from nothing, but their relationship had always been purely professional. James sat down and looked at David with a strange expression. "Are you okay?" he asked. David was confused. "Yes." "Why?" James laughed. "Because you have changed. I cannot put my finger on it, but something is different. You seem more present lately." David thought about the photograph, about the little boy on the beach, about the flower girl and her happy daisies. "I am trying to remember how to be human," he said quietly. James was silent for a moment. Then he smiled sadly. "I know what you mean. We've been so busy building this company, I think we forgot why we started it in the first place." They talked that night. Really talked. For the first time in years. Not about business, but about life. About what they had sacrificed. About what they had lost. About whether success was worth the price they had paid. When James left, David sat alone in his office. The city lights sparkled through the window. He thought about all those years, all those nights working late, all those relationships he had never built, all those moments he had missed because he was too busy climbing. He pulled out the photo album again, looked at that smiling boy on the beach. "I am sorry," he whispered to the photograph. "I forgot you, but I am trying to remember." The next weekend, David did something he had not done in 20 years. He went to the beach. It was early morning. The sand was cool under his feet. The waves rolled in steady and rhythmic. He found a quiet spot and sat down. He just sat there, watching the water, feeling the wind, listening to the gulls. A family nearby was building a sandcastle. The father and 2 children working together, laughing when the walls collapsed, starting over. The same joy David had felt all those years ago. One of the children, a little girl, ran over to him. She was holding a plastic shovel. "Do you want to help us?" she asked. David looked at her hopeful face, looked at her parents, who were smiling at their daughter's confidence in approaching a stranger. For a moment, the old David wanted to say no. He did not have time for this. He had work to do, emails to answer. But the new David, the one who was trying to remember, said, "I would love to." He spent the next hour building a sandcastle with children he did not know. It was lopsided. It kept falling apart. They had to start over 3 times. And David laughed. Really laughed. The sound surprised him. It came from somewhere deep in his chest, somewhere he had locked away for so long. The children laughed with him. The parents smiled. When the castle was finally finished, crooked but standing, the little girl clapped her hands. "We did it!" she shouted, and she hugged David's arm. David felt tears in his eyes. When was the last time someone had hugged him? When was the last time he had let someone close enough to try? He looked at the sandcastle. It would not last. The tide would wash it away in a few hours. But that did not matter. What mattered was this moment, this joy, this connection. He pulled out his phone and took a picture, not of the sandcastle, of himself. Sitting on the beach, sandy and windblown, with the biggest, most genuine smile he had worn in 20 years. That smile was still on his face when he went to work on Monday. People noticed. His assistant did a double take. His colleagues whispered. Even the board members commented during the meeting. "David, you seem different today." In a good way. David just smiled and said, "I am trying something new, being happy." They laughed, thinking it was a joke, but David was serious. The transformation was not instant. There were days when he fell back into old patterns, days when the walls went back up, days when the smile disappeared. But he kept trying. He kept that photograph on his desk. A reminder of who he used to be, who he could be again. Months passed. David started volunteering at a youth center on weekends, mentoring young entrepreneurs, but not the way he used to, focused only on results and success. Now he talked about balance, about joy, about not sacrificing your humanity for achievement. One day, a young man asked him, "Mr. Chen, how did you become so successful?" David thought about the answer he would have given a year ago. Work harder than everyone, never show weakness, climb higher no matter the cost. But now he said something different. "I became successful by achieving my goals, but I became happy when I remembered how to smile." The young man looked confused. "That is it? Just smile?" David shook his head. "It is not just about smiling. It is about remembering that you are human, that success means nothing if you are empty inside, that the point of climbing the mountain is not just to reach the top, but to enjoy the view along the way. I forgot that for 20 years. Do not make the same mistake." On the anniversary of finding that photograph, David went back to the beach. He brought the photo album. He sat in the same spot where he had built the sandcastle. He opened the album and looked at all those smiling faces, all those versions of himself he thought he had lost. But he realized something. He had not lost them. They were still there. They had been there all along, buried under years of armor and walls and fear. The smile was never really forgotten. It was just waiting for him to remember that life is not just about success or achievement or status. Life is about connection, joy, laughter, love. The small moments that make the big moments meaningful. David looked out at the ocean, smiled. And in that smile was the boy he used to be, and the man he had become, and the person he was still learning to be. Finally, after all these years, he felt complete again. Vocabulary review. Now let us learn important words from this story. Mask. Mask. This can mean something you wear over your face, but it also means hiding your true feelings behind a false appearance. David wore a mask of coldness to hide his loneliness. Many people wear masks every day, pretending to be something they are not. Efficient. Efficient. This means doing something in a way that does not waste time or energy. David's life was very efficient, but it was also empty. Being efficient is good for work, but relationships need more than efficiency. They need time and care. Where in your life are you too focused on being efficient? Absorbed. Absorbed. This means being completely focused on something, so focused that you do not notice anything else. The little girl was absorbed in arranging flowers. When was the last time you were so absorbed in something that you forgot about everything else? Connection. Connection. This is the feeling of being close to someone, of understanding and being understood. David had lost all human connection in his chase for success. Real connection requires vulnerability. It requires letting people see who you really are. Who do you have real connection with in your life? Sacrifice. Sacrifice. This means giving up something important for something else. David sacrificed his smile and his joy for success and achievement. Sometimes sacrifice is necessary, but you must be careful what you are willing to sacrifice. What have you sacrificed that you now wish you had kept? Transformation. Transformation. This means a complete change from one thing to something very different. David's transformation from cold businessman to warm human being did not happen overnight. Real transformation takes time and effort. It requires you to face who you have become and decide to change. What transformation do you need in your life? These 6 words tell David's story. He wore a mask that made him efficient but alone. He lost the ability to be absorbed in moments of joy. He gave up connection with others. He sacrificed his smile for success. But through transformation, he found his way back to being human. Remember this story when you feel like you have to choose between success and happiness. You do not. You can have both. But only if you remember that success without joy is just a fancy prison. Only if you remember to smile. Really smile. The kind of smile that comes from deep inside. The kind that changes your whole face. The kind that boy on the beach knew how to do. Do not wait 20 years to remember your smile. Do not wait until you are alone at the top to realize you climbed the wrong mountain. Find your smile now. Protect it. Nurture it. Because a life without smiling is not really a life at all. It is just existence, and you deserve so much more than that.